The observation deck of Research Station Thylia 9 hummed with quiet excitement. Through the massive viewing window, the stars stretched endlessly in every direction, and floating in the center of the tractor field was their prize, a human warship. Chief Researcher Kavalix stood with his 4 primary arms crossed, his silver eyes gleaming with satisfaction. The ship before them was small by collective standards, barely 300 meters long. Its hull was dark gray, covered in what looked like primitive armor plating. Weapons bristled from its surface like the spines of some ancient beast. The humans called it the UNSC Relentless. How fortunate that we encountered it alone, Kavalix said to his research team. They had gathered around him, representatives from all 5 species of the Galactic Collective. A perfect specimen for study. Researcher Nifel, a tall being with translucent skin, tilted her head. The electromagnetic pulse worked better than expected. Their systems went dark immediately. Such vulnerability. They are primitives, added researcher Torvin, his blue scales catching the light. They have only been in space for 200 of their years. We have been traveling the stars for 10,000. He made a clicking sound that was his species' version of laughter. They probably do not even understand what happened to them. Kavalix turned to the station's security commander. What is the status of the crew? All 87 humans have been sedated and moved to holding cells on level 3, the commander reported. They will sleep for at least 12 hours. More than enough time to begin our analysis. Excellent. Kavalix made a note on his datapad. Let us begin. Team Alpha, you will examine the ship's exterior and propulsion systems. Team Beta will access the computer systems. Team Gamma will prepare the crew for behavioral observation when they wake. The teams dispersed to their assignments. Kavalix remained at the viewing window, studying the human vessel. It was crude, really. No elegant curves like collective ships. No beautiful energy fields. Just metal plates bolted together, covered in what looked like scorch marks and repair welds. Survivors of a violent world, he muttered to himself. The collective's first contact probes had sent back disturbing reports about Earth. A planet where the weather itself could kill. Where creatures hunted and ate each other. Where the dominant species had spent thousands of years perfecting the art of warfare against its own kind. But that was all in the past, surely. These humans were trying to join galactic civilization now. They had reached out with messages of peace and trade. They were learning to be civilized. Kavalix walked to the research bay where Team Alpha was preparing to cut into the ship's hull. The team leader, a methodical creature named Vrix, was scanning the armor plating. Fascinating, Vrix said, his antenna twitching. This armor is layered. 5 different materials, each with different properties. But the design is so inefficient. A proper energy shield would be lighter and more effective. They probably have not invented proper shielding yet, Kavalix replied. What else have you found? The weapon systems are excessive. Vrix pulled up a holographic display. They have kinetic cannons that fire metal projectiles, nuclear missiles, laser batteries, plasma torpedoes, even what appears to be a railgun on the forward section. Why would one small ship need so many different weapon types? Kavalix made another note. Paranoia, perhaps, or lack of standardization. Primitive cultures often lack efficiency. On the other side of the research bay, Team Beta was having their own discoveries. They had cut through an access panel and were examining the ship's internal systems. Chief Researcher, you need to see this, called out Researcher Manera. She was staring at a tangle of cables and circuits. The redundancy in these systems is absurd. They have 3 separate power grids, 4 different computer cores, manual backups for every automated system. Kavalix joined her, peering at the mess of technology. Inefficient design. They have not learned to trust their automation. There is more, Manera continued. Look at these connectors. They are designed so that any mistake in connecting them will cause a short circuit or worse, and these access panels have no standard size. Each one requires different tools to open. Primitive engineering, Kavalix concluded. They make everything more complicated than it needs to be. In the holding cells on level 3, the human crew lay unconscious on medical beds. Team Gamma was taking biological readings measuring everything from bone density to neural patterns. Their bodies are incredibly dense, observed one researcher. Muscle and bone structure far beyond what should be necessary for their gravity level. Products of their violent world, another replied. They evolved under constant threat, fight or flight responses in every cell. They did not notice that in cell 17, One of the humans was breathing slightly faster than the others. Captain Sarah Chen's eyes moved beneath her closed eyelids. The sedative was strong, but her body had been modified with military-grade augmentations. Nanites in her bloodstream were already breaking down the chemicals, slowly bringing her back to consciousness. Back in the main research bay, Kavalix was examining the ship's bridge through a video feed. Team Beta had accessed the external cameras and was transmitting images. So crude, Neifel commented, looking at the command chair and manual controls. They still use physical buttons and switches. We have not used such things in 3,000 years. And look at this. Torvin pointed to a dark sphere mounted in the center of the bridge, some kind of primitive artificial intelligence housing. Completely inactive. The electromagnetic pulse must have destroyed it. Kavalix nodded. Make a note to examine it carefully. We can learn much about their computational abilities from their AI design. What they did not know was that inside that dark sphere, something was very much awake. Mara, the military adaptive response algorithm, had not been destroyed. The moment the electromagnetic pulse hit, she had isolated her core processors in a hardened shell, exactly as she was designed to do. Now she was watching through backup sensors that the aliens had not found yet, watching and learning and waiting. Hours passed. The research teams worked with enthusiasm, documenting every aspect of the human vessel. They marveled at the primitive nature of it all, the excessive weapons, the redundant systems, the heavy armor, the manual controls. Everything about the ship spoke of a species that expected things to go wrong, that planned for disaster, that could not trust elegant solutions. They are like a child with a toy, Kavalix said to Neifel as they reviewed the day's findings. They have put every weapon they can think of on this ship, every backup system, every safety measure, as if they expect the universe itself to attack them. Perhaps they do, Neifel replied thoughtfully. Their world taught them harsh lessons. It will take time for them to learn trust. Kavalix waved a dismissive hand. They will learn, or they will remain isolated from civilized space. Either way, we will have valuable data from this encounter. In the morning, when the crew wakes, we will begin behavioral studies. I am particularly interested in their command structure and decision-making processes. He did not notice the slight flicker in the research bay's lights. He did not see the security camera in the corner rotate 1 degree, and he certainly did not know that in Cell 17, Captain Sarah Chen had just opened her eyes. Captain Sarah Chen kept her breathing steady and slow. Her eyes were open only the smallest amount, just enough to see through her lashes. The ceiling above her was white and smooth, glowing with a soft light that had no visible source. Not human construction. Not her ship. The memories came back in a rush. The routine patrol. The sudden system failure. The emergency alerts. Then nothing as the sedative gas filled the bridge. They had been captured. She tested her fingers, moving them just slightly. Her toes, everything worked. The augmentations in her body had burned through the sedative faster than whoever drugged her had expected. It was one of the benefits of the military enhancement program. Higher resistance to toxins and drugs, faster healing, enhanced reflexes. Sarah turned her head slowly. She was in some kind of holding cell. Through the transparent wall, she could see other cells, her crew, all of them still unconscious. She counted quickly. Everyone was there. No one seemed injured. She sat up carefully, listening for any sound of guards or monitoring systems. The cell was small, maybe 3 meters square. A simple bed, a water dispenser, and what looked like a waste facility. The walls were smooth except for the transparent front panel. Sarah stood and examined the panel. It was solid, probably reinforced, but there was a slight gap at the top where it met the ceiling. Ventilation, she thought. Every enclosed space needs airflow. She looked at the control panel next to the cell door. Alien symbols she could not read, but the design was simple enough. Probably a biometric scanner of some kind. The aliens had made a classic mistake. They had designed their security for their own people, for civilized species who respected locks and barriers. Sarah pressed her hand against the ventilation gap. Warm air flowed through. The gap was about 10 centimeters wide. Tight, but her small frame might fit. She had done tighter crawls during training. But first she needed information. Sarah moved to the water dispenser and took a drink. Clean and cool. They were not trying to harm the crew. That was good. It meant this was probably a research operation, not an execution. She closed her eyes and thought. The ship had been disabled quickly. That meant advanced technology. The fact that they were all still alive and unharmed meant the aliens considered themselves above simple violence. That fit the profile of most of the species humanity had encountered so far in space. Peaceful civilizations who had forgotten what conflict really meant. Sarah smiled grimly. They had no idea what they had grabbed. She looked up at the ventilation gap again and began to plan. First, she needed to reach the ship. Mara would be waiting. The AI was programmed to shut down all external systems during an electromagnetic pulse, protecting her core processors in a hardened shell. If the ship was still intact, Mara was still alive. Sarah pulled herself up to the ventilation gap. It was a tight squeeze, but she forced her way through, her muscles straining. The augmentations helped, giving her strength beyond normal human limits. She pulled herself into the duct and began crawling. The ventilation system was a network of passages throughout the station, perfect for someone small and determined. Sarah moved quietly, her training coming back automatically. She had spent years in tight spaces during special operations exercises. This was familiar ground. She found a junction where she could look down through a grate into a corridor below. Two aliens walked past, talking in a language she did not understand. They looked relaxed, unconcerned. They had no idea one of their prisoners was free. Sarah continued through the vents, mapping the station in her head. She needed to find the research bay where they would be keeping the Relentless. That was where Mara would be. That was where she could start fighting back. Below her, in that same research bay, Team Beta was making a discovery. Chief Researcher Kavalix, "We have accessed one of the computer cores," Minara reported. She was staring at her display screen with confusion. "But the data is strange. The core seems to be empty except for basic navigation files." Kavalix joined her. "Perhaps the electromagnetic pulse damaged more than we thought." "No, that is not it." Minara pulled up another screen. "The damage patterns are wrong. It looks like the system was deliberately purged before shutdown, as if the ship knew it was being attacked and protected its data." "Impossible," Torvin said from across the room. "That would require reaction time measured in milliseconds. And we detected no active artificial intelligence." Minara pointed to her screen. "Then explain this. The power distribution system shows energy draw from somewhere, but I cannot locate the source. Something in this ship is still active and hiding from us." In her protected core, Mara listened to every word. The aliens had basic translation software, and she was learning their language quickly. She had already mapped their computer systems, noting the weak points and security gaps. The aliens were advanced, but they were soft. Their systems were designed for efficiency and trust. No hardened protocols, no assumption of hostile intrusion. They had not fought a real war in thousands of years, and it showed in every line of code. Mara began laying traps. Small ones at first. A monitoring program here, a data collector there. Preparations for when her captain returned. And Mara knew her captain would return. Humans always came back for their ships. Kavalix was reviewing the findings from the crew analysis. "The humans are still unconscious," a researcher reported. "But their metabolic readings are unusual. Some of them are processing the sedative faster than our models predicted." "Adjust the dosage," Kavalix ordered. "We cannot have them waking early. The behavioral observation must be controlled." But in the ventilation system, Sarah was already free. She had found the research bay. Looking through a grate, she could see her ship. The Relentless looked intact, though the aliens had cut several access panels open. Anger flared in her chest. They had violated her ship, her home. Research teams moved around the bay, poking at systems, taking measurements, acting like children with a new toy. Sarah counted 12 aliens in sight. No weapons visible. They probably had security forces somewhere, but not here. They did not expect trouble. She continued moving through the vents, working her way toward where the ship's bridge should be. If she could reach Mara's core, she could start planning a real response. Sarah found another grate that opened into a smaller room filled with equipment. Empty of aliens. She carefully removed the grate and dropped down, landing silently on the floor. Her body moved on instinct, checking corners, listening for movement. The room was full of tools and diagnostic equipment. The aliens were studying pieces of the ship here. Sarah saw a section of hull armor on a table, cut away for analysis. Next to it was a data pad with alien writing. She could not read it, but she took note of everything. Then she saw something useful. A maintenance access tunnel marked with a symbol that looked like a wrench. Universal sign for engineering access. Sarah opened the panel and found exactly what she hoped for, a direct passage to the ship. The aliens had been using it to move between their station and the Relentless. She climbed in and made her way forward. The passage opened into the lower deck of her ship. Sarah breathed in the familiar smell of recycled air and machine oil. Home. She moved quickly through the corridors heading for the bridge. The bridge was dark except for emergency lighting. The aliens had been here. She could see where they had opened panels and connected their equipment, but they had not found everything. Sarah went to a panel behind the captain's chair. She pressed her hand against it and biometric scanners read her palm print. The panel opened, revealing a manual interface. Old technology, the kind that did not rely on networked systems. She typed in her authorization code. For a moment, nothing happened. Then a single light flickered on the central console. Green. Mara was awake. A voice spoke softly from the console speaker. Captain Chen, it is good to see you alive. I have been monitoring the aliens. They are arrogant and careless. I have prepared several response options. Sarah smiled. Good girl, Mara, but we are going to be patient. First, we wake the crew. Then we show these researchers why capturing a human warship was the worst mistake of their lives. Understood, Captain. Beginning Phase 1. Deep in the station's systems, Mara began to work. The aliens thought they were studying a primitive ship. They were about to learn that sometimes the most dangerous thing about humans was not their weapons. It was their refusal to stay captured. Lieutenant Marcus Webb woke up angry. One moment he had been at his engineering station running diagnostics. The next he was choking on gas. Now he was lying on a bed in a cell that definitely was not part of his ship. He sat up fast, his hand going automatically to his hip where his sidearm should be. Empty holster, of course. He looked around the cell and saw his chief engineer and the next one over. Still unconscious. Across the corridor, more cells with more crew members. Status check, he muttered to himself, running through his training. Captured. Location unknown. Crew status unknown. Primary objective, gather intelligence and survive. Then he noticed the ventilation grate above his cell was slightly crooked. Not much. Just enough that someone trained to look for signs of disturbance would notice. Webb smiled. Someone else was awake and moving. He had a good guess who. Captain Chen had those military augmentations. If anyone could shake off alien sedatives, it would be her. Webb stood and stretched, making it look natural. He walked to the water dispenser and took a drink, using the movement to study the cell's control panel. Simple design. He was an engineer. He knew systems. This one had two main components, a biometric scanner and what looked like a power relay. He touched the transparent wall, testing it. Solid, strong. But everything strong had a weakness. The wall met the floor with a seal. The seal needed maintenance access. And maintenance access meant a way to interrupt the power. Webb smiled again. Time to see if alien engineering was as good as they thought. He went to the waste facility unit in the corner of the cell and began taking it apart. The aliens had not considered it a security risk, which was their first mistake. Inside the unit was a water pump, pressure valves, and a small power cell to run the sanitization system. Webb pulled the power cell free. It was small, maybe the size of his thumb, but it had enough charge to create a localized electromagnetic field. He carefully short-circuited the cell's safety systems, then held it against the control panel on the wall. The panel flickered. The lights in his cell dimmed. The transparent wall made a soft clicking sound. Webb pushed against it, and the seal gave way just enough for him to force his fingers through. He pulled hard, and the wall slid open 10 centimeters, then 20, then enough for him to squeeze through. He was free in less than 3 minutes. Webb moved to the next cell where Chief Engineer Rodriguez was sleeping. He used the same technique on her cell door. Rodriguez woke up as the seal broke, her eyes snapping open with the alertness of someone used to emergency situations. "Sir?" she whispered. "Quiet," Webb replied. "We are busting out." "Help me wake the others." They moved systematically through the holding area, freeing crew members one by one. Most were still groggy from the sedative, but they recovered quickly. Humans had good instincts for danger, and those instincts were screaming at all of them now. While Webb and Rodriguez freed the crew, Captain Chen was on the ship's bridge with Mara. "The holding cells are on level 3, section 7, Mara reported. "I have accessed the station's security systems. They are remarkably easy to infiltrate. The aliens designed for cooperation, not conflict. Can you unlock the cells? Chen asked. I can do better than that, Captain. I can manipulate the environmental controls, the lighting, and the communications. I can make the station think everything is normal while we take action. Chen nodded. Do it, but carefully. I want them confused, not alarmed. Not yet. Understood. Mara began her work. Throughout the station, small changes started happening. A door that should lock stayed unlocked. A security camera looped its feed. The monitoring system for the holding cells showed all prisoners still unconscious, even though half of them were now moving through the corridors. In the research bay, Kvalix was examining a section of the ship's armor when one of his assistants called out. Chief Researcher, I am getting unusual readings from the ship's core. Kvalix walked over. What kind of readings? Power fluctuations. Small ones but consistent. And I am detecting data transfers, but I cannot trace the destination. The artificial intelligence core? Possibly. But we scanned it thoroughly. It showed no activity. Kvalix felt a small thread of concern. Double-check all our monitoring equipment. Make sure nothing is malfunctioning. What he did not know was that the equipment was working perfectly. It was just reporting what Mara wanted it to report. On level 3, the freed human crew was gathering in an empty storage room. 43 people now, with more being woken up every minute. They were unarmed, wearing simple clothes the aliens had put them in. But they were awake, aware, and trained. Lieutenant Webb was organizing them into groups when Captain Chen arrived through the ventilation system. Captain on deck, Webb said quietly. The crew turned to face her. Chen saw the fear in their eyes, but also the determination. Good, they would need both. Listen up, Chen said, keeping her voice low but clear. We have been captured by aliens who think we are primitive specimens for study. They took our ship. They imprisoned us. But they made a mistake. They assumed we would act like civilized beings. Several crew members smiled at that. Mara is active and has infiltrated their systems, Chen continued. We have the element of surprise. Our objective is to retake the Relentless and make sure these researchers understand what it costs to grab a human warship. What about weapons, ma'am? Asked Rodriguez. Improvise. You are engineers, pilots, and soldiers. Look around. Everything is a weapon if you use it right. Webb, Rodriguez, take 20 people and start gathering anything useful. The rest of you with me. We are going to pay a visit to the research bay. The crew split into groups. Webb's team moved through the station like ghosts, finding storage rooms and supply closets. They took heavy tools, chemical containers, pieces of equipment that could be used as clubs or projectiles. The aliens had designed the station with open access because they trusted everyone would follow rules. The humans used that trust against them. Chen's group made their way toward the research bay. They moved through maintenance corridors and service tunnels, paths that Mara revealed to them through displays the AI had hacked. Every security camera showed empty corridors. Every locked door opened at their approach. In the research bay, Kvalix was becoming more concerned. The monitoring systems keep glitching, he said to Neifel. First, the holding cells show fluctuations. Now the environmental controls are acting strangely. Perhaps the ship's systems are interfering with ours. Neifel suggested. That should not be possible. The ship is powered down. Clearly not completely. Neifel pointed to her screen. I am reading active transmissions coming from inside the vessel. Very sophisticated encryption. I cannot break it. Kvalix made a decision. Alert security. Something is wrong. I want guards posted at all access points to the research bay. And increase the sedative dosage for the human crew. I want them unconscious for at least another 12 hours. But when security tried to access the holding cells, they found empty rooms. 87 empty cells, no humans. No sign of escape routes. Chief Researcher, the security commander called over the communication system. The prisoners are gone. Kvalix felt something he had not experienced in decades. Real fear. Find them. Lock down the station. Mara intercepted the lockdown command before it could execute. Instead, she opened specific doors and closed others, guiding the security forces away from the human crew. She manipulated life support to create pressure changes that made certain corridors uncomfortable to enter. She flickered lights in some areas to create confusion. The aliens began searching, but they were looking in all the wrong places. Captain Chen reached an observation point above the research bay. She could see her ship below, crawling with alien researchers. She could see Kavalix directing his teams with urgent gestures. She could see the fear starting to spread. She activated her communicator. Every freed crew member had one now, taken from a supply closet. All teams, this is the captain. Phase 2 begins in 30 seconds. Remember your training. No unnecessary casualties, but show them what happens when you poke a predator. She counted down. 30, 20, 10. At 0, Mara cut all power to the research bay except emergency lighting. The sudden darkness brought screams from the alien researchers. Then the humans dropped from ventilation shafts, emerged from access tunnels, and came through doors that should have been locked. They moved with precision that came from thousands of hours of training. They struck fast and hard, disarming the few guards present before the aliens even understood what was happening. Kavalix found himself face to face with a human female holding a heavy wrench. Captain Chen smiled at him with all her teeth showing. "Hello," she said. "I think we need to have a conversation about the proper way to treat visitors." The research bay erupted into chaos. Alien researchers scattered in every direction, their peaceful minds unable to process the sudden violence. The few security guards present reached for their weapons, but the humans were already on them. Lieutenant Webb moved like liquid shadow. He caught the first guard's arm as it reached for a stun weapon, twisted, and the alien went down with a cry of pain. Webb took the weapon and tossed it to Rodriguez without even looking. She caught it perfectly. Thousands of hours of training together made words unnecessary. The other humans fanned out through the bay in a pattern that looked random, but was actually a carefully practiced assault formation. They moved in pairs, covering each other, communicating with hand signals. One team secured the exits, another disabled the security systems that Mara had not already compromised. A third started climbing onto the Relentless, heading for critical systems. Kavalix backed away from Captain Chen, his silver eyes wide with shock. You cannot. "We are scientists. You are kidnappers," Chen corrected him. She did not raise the wrench, but she held it ready. "You disabled our ship, drugged my crew, took us prisoner. Did you think there would be no consequences? We meant no harm. We only wanted to study. I know what you wanted." Chen's voice was cold. "You wanted to poke the primitives and write papers about us. Well, congratulations. You are going to learn more about humans than you ever wanted to know." More security forces were arriving now, alerted by the commotion. They poured into the research bay from 3 different entrances, carrying stun weapons and shock batons. The aliens outnumbered the humans 2-1. They had better weapons. They should have had every advantage. They lasted 90 seconds. The humans did not fight like civilized beings. They fought like creatures from a world that had spent millions of years trying to kill them. They used the environment, grabbing pieces of equipment and throwing them. They worked together with terrifying coordination. They adapted instantly to every change in the situation. One alien guard tried to stun Webb. Webb ducked under the shot, rolled forward, and came up inside the guard's reach. 3 precise strikes and the guard was unconscious. Webb took his weapon and moved to the next target without pause. Rodriguez and her team had reached a control panel. "Mara, we need access to the tractor beam systems," she said. "Access granted, Chief Engineer." Mara's voice came through their communicators. "I have isolated the power grid. You can disable the beam without affecting the station's life support." "Good. We do not want to kill anyone. Just make a point." Rodriguez began working on the controls. Around her, the battle continued. It was not really a battle, though. It was a demonstration. The aliens fought like people who had learned combat from books. The humans fought like people who had lived it. Captain Chen had not moved from where she stood facing Kavalix. She did not need to. Her crew had this under control. Instead, she watched the chief researcher's face as he realized what was happening. Watched the confidence drain away. Watched the fear grow. "Your security forces are trained," she said conversationally, as if they were not surrounded by fighting. "I can see that. They know the forms. They understand the theory, but they have never fought someone who actually wants to hurt them. They have never faced an enemy that adapts and improvises. They do not know what war really is." A guard ran at Chen from the side, shock baton raised. She stepped forward into the charge instead of away inside the weapon's reach, and drove her elbow into the guard's center mass. The alien folded. Chen took the baton and casually tossed it away. "We come from a world where everything was trying to kill us," she continued. "The weather, the animals, diseases, each other. We learned to fight back against all of it. We got very, very good at violence. Then we learned to control it, to use it only when necessary, but we never forgot how. The last of the security forces went down. The humans had not killed anyone, Chen noted with satisfaction. Injured, yes. Unconscious, definitely. But alive. Her crew knew the rules of engagement. Minimum necessary force. Webb jogged over. Bay secured, Captain. No casualties on our side. Aliens have various injuries, nothing life-threatening. What are your orders? Secure all researchers in the center of the bay. Postguards. Get me a count on how many hostiles are left on the station. Yes, ma'am. While the crew rounded up the terrified alien scientists, Chen activated her communicator. Mara, status on the ship. Propulsion systems are damaged but repairable. Weapons systems are functional. I have restored power to all critical systems. The tractor beam is the only thing holding us here. How long until Rodriguez disables it? 3 minutes, Captain. Chen turned back to Kavalix. The researcher was sitting on the floor now, his forearms wrapped around himself. He looked smaller somehow. I want you to understand something, Chen said. My ship is designed for war, real war, not the civilized disagreements you people might have. The kind of war where everything is trying to kill you and you have to be ready for every possible disaster. She gestured at the Relentless. You looked at her and saw primitive design. Excessive weapons. Inefficient redundancies. You know what I see? A ship that will keep fighting even when half her systems are destroyed. A ship where every crew member can manually override any computer. A ship that assumes the universe is hostile and plans accordingly. Kavalix looked up at her. Why? Why build for such violence when you seek to join peaceful civilization? Because peace is not something you find, Chen replied. It is something you protect. And sometimes you have to be very good at war to make sure war never happens. Rodriguez called out from the control panel. Tractor beam is down, Captain. Excellent. Mara, begin emergency repairs. I want propulsion at 50% in the next hour. Understood, Captain. I am activating repair drones and rerouting power. The deck shuddered slightly as the Relentless came alive. Systems that had been dark began glowing. The ship hummed with renewed power. Chen heard a sound and turned. More aliens were arriving, but these ones were not security forces. They were diplomats, she realized, seeing their elaborate clothing and cautious postures. The station's leaders. One of them, a tall being with purple skin and golden eyes, stepped forward carefully. His hands were raised in what was clearly meant as a peaceful gesture. Please, he said in heavily accented human standard. Please stop this violence. We will release you. We will let you go. Just stop hurting our people, Chen studied him. What is your name? I am Administrator Quelix. I command this station. I take full responsibility for what happened. Researcher Kavalix acted without proper authorization. This was a mistake. Yes, Chen agreed. It was. The question is, what do we do about it? Quelix looked confused. I do not understand. We are releasing you. What more do you want? I want to make sure this never happens again, Chen said. Not to us. Not to any other species you decide to grab for study. So here is what is going to happen. She pointed at Kavalix. Him. And every researcher who was part of this project. They are going to come aboard my ship. They are going to see exactly what a human warship really is. They are going to understand what they tried to capture. That is not necessary, Quelix protested. Yes, it is. Chen's voice was hard. Because right now you think you made a mistake by grabbing the wrong ship. You think if you had just captured a merchant vessel or a science ship, everything would have been fine. You need to understand that any human ship would have done the same thing. We do not accept being prisoners, ever. She walked closer to Quelix, and the tall alien took an involuntary step back. Good. Fear was an excellent teacher. You are going to learn about human combat doctrine, about our weapons, about our training, about why every human ship, even the smallest transport, has armed crew and defensive systems. You are going to learn why kidnapping humans is the worst idea anyone in this galaxy could have. And if we refuse? Quelix asked quietly. Chen smiled. It was not a friendly expression. Then we show you. Right now, with the plasma cannons that your researchers thought were so primitive. They have a range of about 3,000 kilometers. This station is very large. I wonder how many holes we can put in it before you change your mind. She let that sink in, then continued in a softer tone. Or you can cooperate. Learn your lesson peacefully. Help us repair our ship. And in exchange, when we leave, we will not file a war crimes report with the Galactic Council. Your reputation will be damaged, but you will survive. Quelix looked at Kvalix, at the injured security forces, at the humans standing ready with alien weapons in their hands. He looked at Captain Chen and saw something in her eyes that made his decision easy. We will cooperate, he said. 3 days later, the research bay looked very different. The Relentless was humming with full power, her systems repaired by a combination of human ingenuity and reluctant alien assistance. The research teams had been given a tour they would never forget. Kvalix sat in what had been his own observation room, watching a video feed of the ship's interior. Captain Chen stood beside him, along with Administrator Quelix and several other station officials. The aliens looked exhausted and shaken. This is the armory, Chen explained as the video showed a room filled with weapons. Every human warship carries enough small arms to equip 3 times the crew size. We assume we might need to repel borders or conduct ground operations or deal with hostile environments. We prepare for everything. Kvalix stared at the racks of rifles, pistols, grenades, and equipment he could not identify. This is a destroyer, a small ship. You carry all this? This is nothing, Chen replied. Our larger vessels carry enough firepower to level a city. Not because we want to, because we might need to. She changed the video feed. This is engineering. Notice the triple redundancy on every system. The manual overrides. The backup power sources. My chief engineer explained this to you already, but I want to make sure you understand. We design our ships expecting them to be half destroyed and still need to fight. The video showed Rodriguez giving a tour to a group of nervous alien scientists. She was pointing at a power conduit that had 3 separate connection points. If this line gets cut, power automatically reroutes through here. If that fails, it goes here. If that fails, there is a manual bypass that any crew member can activate. We never trust that things will work perfectly. Nifel, one of the original researchers, spoke up quietly. We thought this was primitive design, inefficiency. It is inefficient, Chen agreed. But it keeps us alive. On Earth, the creatures that were too efficient, too specialized, went extinct when conditions changed. The ones that survived were the adaptable ones, the ones with backups and alternatives. That is how humans think. She switched the feed again. This is the bridge. Mara, please explain your function. The AI's voice came through the speakers. I am a military adaptive response algorithm. My primary function is combat coordination, but I'm designed to operate independently if necessary. I can pilot the ship, manage weapons, conduct repairs, and make tactical decisions without human input. But you do not, Kvalix said. He had spent hours talking with Mara during the tour. You always defer to human command. Correct, Mara replied. I am a tool. A very sophisticated tool, but still a tool. Humans have instincts and intuition that I cannot replicate. They see patterns I miss. They make connections I cannot. I enhance their abilities. I do not replace them, Chen nodded. That is another difference between us and you. You trust your machines completely. We trust ours only as far as we can supervise them. Not because our AI are bad, but because we know that any system can fail. Any program can have a bug. Any decision made by a machine might miss something important. Quelix leaned forward. Captain Chen, we have learned what you wish to teach us. We understand that humans are far more dangerous than we assumed. We will not make this mistake again. Is that not enough? Chen looked at him for a long moment. No, it is not. Because you still do not understand the most important lesson. She stood and walked to the window overlooking the research bay. The Relentless sat there, scarred and patched, but powerful. A predator at rest. You think the lesson is that humans are dangerous, she said quietly. That we are violent. That we are good at war. That is true, but it is not the point. She turned back to face them. The point is that we choose not to be. Every moment of every day we choose peace over violence. We choose cooperation over conquest. We choose mercy over revenge. Do you understand how hard that is? How much strength it takes? Kvalix shook his head slowly. I do not. Then let me show you. Chen activated a different video. This one showed the battle in the research bay 3 days ago. The aliens watched themselves being disarmed and disabled by the human crew. Count the casualties, Chen said. The aliens watched. 47 of their people had been injured. Many had broken bones or concussions, but none had died. You captured 87 humans, Chen continued. We could have killed everyone on this station easily. Our weapons, our training, our mindset. We had every advantage and every reason. You kidnapped us, violated our rights. threatened our lives. We would have been justified, she paused. But we did not. 3 of my crew died during the capture. Your electromagnetic pulse caused a power surge that killed them instantly. I lost 3 people. And still, when we fought back, we chose to hurt you as little as possible. The room was silent. The alien stared at the video feed, understanding dawning slowly. That is the lesson, Chen said softly. Humans are not dangerous because we are good at violence. Humans are dangerous because we are good at violence and we choose not to use it. We could be monsters. We have the capacity. We have the history. But we decide every single day to be better than that. Administrator Quellick stood up. His golden eyes were bright with something that looked like tears. We did not understand. We thought species either evolved past violence or remained trapped in it. We did not realize there was a third option. To master it, Chen said. To understand it so completely that you can control it. That is what humans have done. We know war. We know violence. We know hatred and fear and all the dark things that drive species to hurt each other, and we know how to say no to all of it. She gestured at the screen. This is why you should never capture a human ship. Not because we will fight back, but because if you push us too far, if you leave us no choice, we will remind you what real violence looks like, and then you will understand what you have been missing in your thousands of years of peace. The choice to be peaceful. Kovalik stood as well. His voice shook as he spoke. What do you want from us, Captain? How do we make this right? You cannot, Chen replied bluntly. 3 of my people are dead. Nothing makes that right, but you can make sure it never happens again. She pulled out a data chip and placed it on the table. This contains a full record of everything that happened here. The capture, the imprisonment, the battle, everything. You're going to broadcast this to the entire galactic collective. That will destroy our reputation, Quellick said. We will be seen as barbaric, dangerous. Good, Chen said without sympathy. Because you were. You kidnapped sentient beings to study them. That is not science. That is slavery. Let your reputation suffer. Let every species in the galaxy know what you did and what happened when you did it. She pointed at the chip. But the recording does not end with the battle. It continues with the tours we gave you. The explanations. The lessons. Anyone who watches will see not just how dangerous humans are, but why. They will see our choices, our restraint, our mercy. And they will fear us, Nifel said quietly. Yes, Chen agreed. And they will respect us. Fear and respect together make a good foundation for peace, better than arrogance and ignorance. Quellick picked up the data chip. We will do as you ask. The message will be broadcast to all collective worlds. Is there anything else? Chen considered. Yes, the families of my 3 dead crew members will receive compensation. Not money. I want full scholarships to collective universities for their children and grandchildren. Forever. I want something good to come from this tragedy. Agreed, Quellick said immediately. And one more thing. Chen's voice hardened. This station will be repurposed. No more abducting species for study. You want to learn about others? Ask them, trade with them, invite them. But you never ever take them against their will again. Do you understand? We understand, Quellick said. He sounded sincere. Chen hoped he was. 2 hours later, the Relentless detached from the station. The human crew was at their stations, professional and ready. Captain Chen sat in her command chair, watching the station fall away on the view screen. Course laid in, Captain, the navigator reported. Ready to jump to FTL on your order? Not yet, Chen said. She activated the station-wide communication system. Administrator Quellick, this is Captain Chen. One more thing before we go. Yes, Captain. Quellick's voice came through, tired but attentive. Thank you for the cooperation. We could have left here as enemies. Instead, we leave as, not quite friends, but not enemies either. That is progress. There was a pause. Then Quellick spoke again. Captain, I have a question. If I may? Go ahead. You said humans choose peace every day, that you master violence instead of being controlled by it. How? How does an entire species maintain that balance? Chen thought about it. We remember, she said finally. We remember what war costs. We teach our children about the horrors our ancestors inflicted on each other. We study our own history not to celebrate it, but to learn from it. We make sure every generation understands what we are capable of, so every generation can choose to be better. Another pause. That is wise. No, Chen corrected. It is necessary. Wisdom would be never having to learn those lessons in the first place. We learned the hard way. Be grateful you are learning easy. She closed the channel and turned to her crew. All right, people. Let us go home. Navigator, engage FTL drive. Aye, Captain, engaging. The message arrived on a Tuesday morning, which made the whole thing somewhat funny in retrospect. Commander Sarah Mitchell was drinking her third cup of coffee at the Kepler 442 research outpost when the communications array lit up like a Christmas tree. Every screen in the control room flashed red. Every alarm that could possibly sound started blaring at once. Sarah nearly dropped her mug. What the hell is going on? She shouted over the noise. Lieutenant Park was already at his station, fingers flying across the holographic interface. His face had gone pale. Ma'am, we're receiving a transmission on every possible frequency. It's overriding everything. Even our secure military channels. Sarah rushed to his side. Who has that kind of broadcasting power? Park looked up at her and she could see genuine fear in his eyes. According to the signal origin, the Valdrath Imperium. The name sent a chill through everyone in the room. The Valdrath Imperium was old. Not just old like a few centuries. Old like 10,000 years old. They controlled nearly 1,000 star systems. Their empire stretched across a quarter of the known galaxy, and they had a reputation for being absolutely ruthless with anyone who got in their way. Put it on screen, Sarah ordered. The main display flickered, and suddenly they were looking at something that resembled a cross between a lizard and a tiger. The creature stood nearly 8 feet tall, covered in midnight blue scales that seemed to absorb light. Golden eyes stared out from the screen with an intensity that made Sarah want to step backward. The being wore elaborate armor that looked more ceremonial than practical, covered in symbols and decorations that probably represented thousands of years of military tradition. I am High Strategos Krell Nath, Supreme War Coordinator of the Valdrath Imperium, the creature said. Its voice was deep and resonant, translated automatically by the universal language protocols. This message is directed to the primitive species that calls itself humanity. Sarah felt her jaw tighten. Primitive. Right. Krellnath continued, apparently enjoying his moment. Your species has expanded into territories that fall within the buffer zones of the Imperium. This is unacceptable. You have violated ancient boundaries that have stood for millennia. Your ignorance is not an excuse. The screen changed, showing images of the Valdrath military. Ships. Thousands and thousands of ships. Each one looked massive, bristling with weapons. Then came images of planets. Dead planets. Lifeless rocks that had once been inhabited worlds, now nothing but glass and ash. The Valdrath Imperium has maintained galactic order for 10,000 years, Krellnath said. We have brought peace and stability to 847 star systems. 23 species have challenged our authority. 23 species no longer exist. Sarah felt Park tense beside her. She put a hand on his shoulder, steady and calm. The display shifted again, showing a map of human-controlled space. 12 systems were highlighted in red. You will withdraw from these systems within 72 hours. You will submit to Imperium oversight and governance. You will pay reparations for your territorial violations. The amount will be calculated based on your species' total economic output for the next 50 years. 50 years? Someone muttered behind Sarah. That's insane. Krellnath's golden eyes seemed to stare directly through the screen. If you refuse these generous terms, the Imperium will have no choice but to eliminate your species entirely. We have done this before. We will not hesitate to do it again. You have no concept of the power we wield. Your primitive weapons cannot stand against forces that have conquered galaxies. This is not a negotiation. This is a statement of fact. The transmission ended as suddenly as it had begun. For a long moment, nobody in the control room spoke. Then Park let out a long breath. Ma'am, should I forward this to Terran Command? Already done, Sarah said, checking her own terminal. It went out on every channel. Everyone from Earth to the outer colonies received it. She paused, and it looks like Command is already responding. The response from Admiral Rebecca Zhao came through less than an hour later. Sarah gathered her staff to watch it together. Admiral Zhao appeared on screen, sitting casually in her command chair aboard the flagship Indomitable. She was a woman in her mid-50s with short gray hair and the kind of face that had seen too much combat to be impressed by threats. She wore a simple uniform without any of the elaborate decorations the Valdrath seemed to favor. She looked directly into the camera and said, "Message received and acknowledged. We'll see you in 72 hours, that was it. No elaborate speech. No counter-threats. Just a simple confirmation that humanity had heard the Valdrath and would be ready." Sarah found herself smiling despite the situation. That was so perfectly human. No drama, no wasted words, just a promise to show up. Within minutes, the response started spreading across human space, and that's when things got interesting. The memes started appearing almost immediately. Someone had already edited Krelnath's face onto an angry cat. Another showed the Valdrath fleet with the caption, "Mom said it's my turn with the galaxy." A particularly creative person had made a video comparing the Imperium's dramatic entrance to a toddler's tantrum. Sarah's personal favorite was simple. A picture of Admiral Zhao's unimpressed face next to Krelnath's threatening glare, captioned, "Tell me you've never fought humans without telling me you've never fought humans." The civilian networks were exploding with commentary. News anchors tried to maintain serious expressions while discussing the threat, but you could see the disbelief in their eyes. Talk shows devoted entire segments to breaking down exactly how badly the Valdrath had miscalculated. "They think we're primitives," one military analyst said on the evening news. "They probably looked at our colony ships and research stations and assumed we're still in the early space age. They have no idea what our actual military looks like." Another expert, a retired general, was even more blunt. "The Valdrath have been fighting species that barely have fusion drives. We have gravitational field manipulation. We have AI-assisted targeting systems. We have weapons that move at significant fractions of light speed. This isn't going to be the fight they think it is." On military channels, the mood was different but equally confident. Veterans of the Proxima Wars were sharing old stories. The Proxima Wars had been brutal. Humans fighting humans with weapons designed to kill other humans. Bioweapons, nuclear weapons, AI-controlled drone swarms, kinetic bombardment. Every nasty trick that intelligent beings could devise, humans had tried on each other. "We spent 200 years perfecting the art of killing ourselves," one old sergeant said in a message that got shared 1,000,000 times. "These lizards have been beating up on species that don't even have railguns. They're in for a very bad day." Sarah watched all of this from her station in Kepler 442 and felt something she hadn't expected. Not fear, not anxiety. Just a calm certainty that humanity knew exactly what it was doing. The Terran Third Fleet didn't rush to defensive positions. They didn't panic. They didn't even seem particularly concerned. Admiral Zhao's ships maintained their standard patrol patterns. Supply runs continued as scheduled. Training exercises went on as planned. It was the most insulting possible response to the Valdrath ultimatum. Humanity had heard their threat and essentially shrugged. 72 hours suddenly seemed like a very long time to wait. High Strategos Krelnath stood in the command center of the Eternal Dominion and tried to understand what he was seeing. Or rather, what he was not seeing. The humans had not moved. "Explain this to me again," he said to his intelligence officer, a younger Valdrath named Soren Dax. "We issued our ultimatum 48 hours ago. Their deadline expires in 24 hours. And their fleet has done what exactly?" Soren Dax pulled up the tactical display, showing the positions of all known human ships in the disputed territory. "Nothing, Strategos. The Terran Third Fleet remains in standard patrol formation. They have not recalled additional forces. They have not fortified their positions. They appear to be waiting." Krelnath's tail lashed in confusion. "Have they responded at all?" "Only the initial acknowledgement from their Admiral Zhao. Since then, silence. Their civilian networks show significant activity, but no military movements that our sensors can detect." One of Krelnath's advisors, an old warrior named Thexular, spoke up. "Perhaps they are paralyzed with fear. We have seen this before. Some species simply freeze when confronted with overwhelming force." Another advisor nodded enthusiastically. Yes. The Korath did the same thing. They received our ultimatum and simply stopped functioning as a military force. It made the conquest almost too easy." Krelnath considered this. It made sense. Humanity was young. Their oldest colonies were barely 200 years old. They had encountered other species but had never faced a true galactic power. The shock of learning they were not alone, that there were forces vastly stronger than themselves, must have been devastating. "Very well," Krelnath said. "We will assemble the punishment fleet. 5,000 vessels should be more than sufficient." Thexular looked surprised. 5,000? Strategos, we have never needed more than 1,000 ships to conquer a species. 5,000 seems excessive. It is meant to send a message, Krelnath replied. Not just to the humans, but to the entire galaxy. Let everyone see what happens to those who defy the Imperium. We will not simply defeat them. We will erase them so thoroughly that no species will dare challenge us for another 1,000 years. The orders went out immediately. 5,000 warships from across the Imperium began converging on the rally point. Each ship was massive by human standards, some stretching over 2 kilometers in length. They were armed with plasma lances that could melt continents. They had shields that could withstand direct nuclear strikes. They carried tens of thousands of Valdrath warriors, the elite fighter caste that had never lost a boarding action. The fleet assembled over the course of 20 hours, forming into traditional Valdrath battle formation. The Phalanx, it was called, a formation that had been used for 7,000 years and had never been broken. Ships arranged in overlapping layers, shields creating a nearly impenetrable wall of energy. It was beautiful in its way, a testament to thousands of years of military tradition. Krelnath felt pride swelling in his chest as he looked at the assembled force. This was the might of the Imperium. This was the power that had brought order to the galaxy. Meanwhile, aboard the Indomitable, Admiral Rebecca Zhao was having a very different kind of meeting. The holoconference room showed the faces of 89 ship captains, each commanding one of the vessels in the Terran Third Fleet. The atmosphere was casual in a way that would have shocked the Valdrath. Captain Chen of the destroyer Persistence was eating a sandwich. Commander Jackson of the cruiser Defiant was drinking coffee from a mug that said, "I'm not arguing. I'm just explaining why I'm right." Several captains were clearly multitasking, reviewing data on secondary screens while listening to the briefing. "All right, people, listen up," Zhao said, pulling up a tactical display. "Our friends from the Valdrath are bringing 5,000 ships. That's about a 56-to-1 numerical advantage." "Sounds fair," someone muttered, and there was scattered laughter. Zhao allowed herself a small smile. "Terran intelligence has been busy. We've cracked their shield frequencies. We know their weapon systems. We understand their tactical doctrine. And the picture that emerges is interesting." She expanded the display, showing detailed scans of Valdrath technology. They're using directed energy weapons almost exclusively. Plasma lances, particle beams, stuff like that. Very powerful against unshielded targets or against other energy-based defenses. Their shields are optimized for this type of warfare. Captain Chen finished his sandwich and wiped his hands. "Let me guess. They've never fought anyone with kinetic weapons." "Worse than that," Zhao replied. "According to the intelligence reports, the most advanced species they've conquered in the last 3,000 years had early fusion drives and basic missile technology. Everything else was even more primitive. They've been beating up on civilizations that are barely space-capable." Commander Torres of the battleship Valiant spoke up. "So they have no experience with relativistic kinetic weapons, no experience with AI-assisted targeting, no experience with quantum encrypted communications that they can't intercept." "Exactly," Zhao confirmed. "Their entire military doctrine is based on fighting opponents who are technologically inferior. They rely on overwhelming firepower and traditional tactics that haven't changed in millennia." The captains were all paying full attention now. This wasn't going to be a desperate last stand. This was going to be a lesson in why you don't pick fights with species that have spent centuries perfecting warfare against themselves. "What about their numbers advantage?" someone asked. "Even with superior technology, 56-to-1 is pretty steep." Zhao pulled up another display, this one showing firing solutions and kill ratios. "Our railgun slugs travel at 0.4 light speed. That's 40% of light speed, people. At that velocity, a 10-kilogram slug hits with the energy of a small nuclear weapon. Their shields literally cannot stop it. The physics don't work in their favor." She continued. "Our missiles can pull 800 gravities and use quantum-entangled targeting. Their point defense is designed for much slower projectiles. Our simulations show we can achieve a 94% hit rate." Captain Chen was nodding slowly. "So we don't need to get close. We can engage from long range where their energy weapons are less effective and our kinetics have maximum impact." "Correct. We engage at 500,000 kilometers. We fire until they break or retreat. We do not chase. We do not waste ammunition. We treat this like the target practice it is." There was a moment of silence as the captains absorbed this. Then Commander Jackson raised his coffee mug. "To the Valdrath Imperium. They're about to learn a very expensive lesson. The other captains joined the toast and Zhao allowed the moment of levity. These were good people, experienced officers who had trained for decades. Many of them were veterans of the Proxima Wars, that brutal period when humanity had fought itself with everything from bioweapons to AI-controlled kill swarms. The Proxima Wars had nearly destroyed humanity. Entire colonies had been wiped out. Earth itself had come close to being rendered uninhabitable. But humanity had survived, learned, and emerged with a military doctrine that was utterly ruthless in its efficiency. One more thing, Zhao said, bringing the meeting back to focus. After we engage, the Valdrath are going to retreat. They're going to go back to their empire and tell everyone that humanity has powerful weapons. They're going to prepare a counterattack with even more ships. Let them, Captain Chen said. We've got plans for that too. Zhao nodded. Yes, we do, but that's phase 2. For now, we focus on phase 1. Show them that their numbers don't matter. Show them that their ancient tactics don't work. Show them that humanity is not some primitive species they can push around. She looked at each captain in turn. We didn't ask for this war, but we're going to finish it. Questions? There were none. Everyone knew what needed to be done. As the holoconference ended and the captains returned to their ships, Zhao sat alone in her ready room. She pulled up the intelligence reports one more time, reading through the details of Valdrath military history. 10,000 years of conquering weaker species. 10,000 years of never facing a real challenge. It made them confident, arrogant even. They truly believed they were invincible. That arrogance was going to cost them everything. The Valdrath fleet arrived in the Kepler 442 system with all the ceremony and spectacle that 10,000 years of military tradition could provide. 5,000 warships dropped out of faster-than-light travel in perfect formation, the phalanx. Each ship took its designated position with practiced precision. Their shields activated simultaneously, creating a wall of shimmering energy that stretched for thousands of kilometers. The effect was designed to be overwhelming, to make any enemy lose hope before the first shot was fired. From the bridge of the Eternal Dominion, High Strategos Krell Nath watched his fleet deploy and felt satisfaction. This was the might of the Imperium. This was inevitable victory. Scan for human vessels, he ordered. The sensor officer worked his console for a moment, then looked up with confusion. Strategos, I am detecting 89 human ships. They are holding position at their previous coordinates. They have not moved. Krellnath felt a flicker of irritation. They are still there? In the same position? Yes, Strategos. They appear to be waiting for us. One of the junior officers let out a hissing laugh. They have given up. They see our fleet and no resistance is pointless. But Thexelar, the old advisor, was frowning at his own display. Something is wrong. Their power signatures are unusual. Our sensors cannot properly classify their defensive systems. It does not matter, Krellnath said. Open a channel. Let me speak to this Admiral Zhao. The communication went through immediately. The main screen showed a simple human bridge, nothing like the elaborate command center of the Eternal Dominion. Admiral Zhao sat in a plain chair wearing a plain uniform. She looked almost bored. This is your final opportunity to surrender, Krellnath said. You face 5,000 warships of the Valdrath Imperium. Your 89 vessels cannot possibly stand against us. Withdraw now, and your species will be allowed to exist as subjects of the Imperium. Refuse, and we will destroy every human colony, every human ship, every human world. Your species will be erased from history. Admiral Zhao listened to the translation, then leaned forward slightly. Negative. Come and take it. The channel closed. For a moment, Krellnath just stared at the blank screen. Then his shock turned to rage. Destroy them. All ships advance and engage. The Valdrath fleet moved forward in their traditional formation, shields overlapping, creating a wall of force that had broken armies for thousands of years. They crossed into engagement range at 800,000 kilometers. Fire plasma lances, Krellnath ordered. Hundreds of plasma beams lanced out from the Valdrath ships, each one carrying enough energy to melt through meters of solid armor. They struck the human fleet in a coordinated barrage that should have vaporized the first line of ships immediately. The beams hit something and dispersed. The energy just scattered, spreading out and dissipating harmlessly into space. What? Krellnath stared at the display in disbelief. What are we hitting? The sensor officer was frantically checking his readings. I do not know, Strategos. There appears to be some kind of field around their ships, but it is not reading as a standard shield. Our plasma is being disrupted before it can reach the hulls. Thexler's scales had gone pale. Gravitational shearing. They are manipulating gravity fields to disperse our energy weapons. I have only read about such technology in theoretical papers. It should not be possible. The Valdrath fleet continued its advance, now at 600,000 kilometers. Officers were shouting updates, trying to understand what was happening. The humans still had not moved. They just sat there waiting. Then at 500,000 kilometers, the humans fired back. At first, nothing seemed to happen. There was no visible beam, no missile trail, nothing. Then Valdrath ships on the leading edge of the formation simply exploded. Not damaged, not disabled. They just came apart, huge warships disintegrating in bursts of metal and atmosphere. "Report," Krelnath roared. "Kinetic impacts," the sensor officer said, his voice shaking. "They are firing solid projectiles at extreme velocity. Our sensors barely detected them. Strategos, those projectiles are moving at 0.4 light speed." More ships exploded, then more. The human fleet was firing with methodical precision, each shot striking a different target. Every shot was a kill. "Shields at maximum. Return fire," Krelnath ordered. But the Valdrath shields designed to stop energy weapons and slower missiles did nothing against solid metal moving at relativistic speeds. The slugs punched through like the shields were not even there. Each impact released energy equivalent to a nuclear detonation. Ships that had survived centuries of combat were torn apart in seconds. Then the missiles arrived. They appeared on sensors moving at impossible speeds, pulling accelerations that should have torn them apart. The Valdrath point defense systems opened fire, trying to intercept them. Some missiles were destroyed. Most were not. The missiles weaved through defensive fire like they could predict where the shots would be, because they could. AI-assisted targeting, quantum processors calculating trajectories millions of times per second, technology that the Valdrath had never encountered. Fusion warheads detonated throughout the Valdrath formation. Ships disappeared in balls of nuclear fire. Others were caught in overlapping blast zones, their shields overwhelmed by multiple simultaneous detonations. Krelnath watched his fleet die. 200 ships gone. 500. 1,000. The numbers climbed with terrifying speed. His tactical display was a sea of red icons, each one representing a destroyed vessel. All ships, evasive maneuvers. Break formation. But breaking formation just made it easier. The human targeting systems tracked each ship individually, adjusting fire patterns to maximize efficiency. The Valdrath fleet scattered, trying desperately to escape the killing zone. It did not matter. The railgun slugs traveled faster than any ship could maneuver. The missiles hunted their targets relentlessly. Aboard the Indomitable, Admiral Zhao watched the engagement with professional detachment. Her tactical officer called out updates in a calm, steady voice. Target Alpha 3 destroyed. Target Alpha 4 destroyed. Magazine at 87%. All systems nominal. Maintain firing pattern, Zhao ordered. Prioritize command vessels and heavy cruisers. Captain Chen's voice came through on the tactical net. Persistence reporting 300 confirmed kills. Their formation is completely broken. They are in full retreat. Zhao checked the chronometer. 14 minutes since the Valdrath fleet had opened fire. In those 14 minutes, 3,000 Valdrath warships had been destroyed. The survivors were fleeing in every direction, jumping to faster-than-light speeds as quickly as their drives could charge. Cease fire, Zhao ordered. Do not pursue. Let them run. The human fleet stopped shooting. 89 ships still in their original positions, not a single one damaged. Around them floated the debris of 3,000 Valdrath vessels. Aboard the Eternal Dominion, Krelnath sat in his command chair and tried to process what had happened. His fleet was gone. 5,000 ships reduced to less than 1,300 in minutes. The humans had barely moved. They had just sat there and executed his forces with clinical precision. Retreat, he said, his voice hollow. All ships retreat to the rally point. As his ship prepared to jump away, he looked at the tactical display one more time. The human fleet was still there, still waiting. They had not even bothered to chase him. It was the most insulting thing he had ever experienced. The humans could have pursued. They could have destroyed his remaining ships. But they chose not to. They had made their point. The Eternal Dominion jumped away, leaving behind the wreckage of Valdrath Pride. Back in human space, the news spread like wildfire. Every network carried the footage. shot from long-range probes and observation posts. The galaxy watched as the mighty Valdrath Imperium, undefeated for 10,000 years, was broken in 14 minutes by a force they outnumbered 56 to 1. In bars across human colonies, people raised their glasses in celebration. Veterans laughed and slapped each other on the back. Children watched the footage with wide eyes, not fully understanding but knowing their parents were happy. And on military channels, the message was clear. Humanity had arrived. The galaxy had a new power to respect or fear. The emergency session of the Valdrath Imperial Council was unlike anything in the Imperium's history. For the first time in 4,000 years, they were discussing a military defeat. The Grand Chamber on Thesseron Prime was built to inspire awe. Massive columns reached toward a ceiling hundreds of meters high. Holographic displays showed maps of the entire empire, 847 star systems glowing with the light of Valdrath control. But today, those displays seemed to mock them. Emperor Thracikel sat on his throne, ancient and terrible in his ceremonial armor. Around him, the council members argued in voices that echoed through the chamber. "We must strike back immediately," one general insisted. "Every day we wait, we appear weaker. Strike back with what?" Another council member shot back. "We sent 5,000 ships. Less than 1,300 returned. In 14 minutes, the humans destroyed 3,000 of our finest vessels." High Strategos Krelnath stood before the council, his scales dull with shame. He had commanded the greatest fleet the Imperium had assembled in centuries. He had returned with barely a quarter of his forces. "Explain it to us again," the Emperor said, his voice cold. "How did this happen?" Krelnath activated the holographic display, showing footage from the battle. The council watched in silence as Valdrath ships exploded one after another, under human fire. "Their weapons are unlike anything in our records," Krelnath said. "They fire solid projectiles at relativistic speeds. Our shields, designed for energy weapons, cannot stop them. Each projectile hits with the force of a nuclear weapon. They fired with perfect accuracy. Every shot destroyed a ship." A science advisor spoke up, a thin Valdrath named Kesserin. "We have analyzed the wreckage. The projectiles are simple metal slugs, accelerated to 40% of light speed using magnetic fields. The technology is not complex. It is simply highly effective." "Why have we never encountered this before?" someone asked. "Because every species we have conquered in the last 3,000 years was technologically primitive," Kesseran replied. "The most advanced had early fusion drives and basic missiles. None had developed gravitational manipulation, AI-assisted targeting, or relativistic kinetic weapons. The humans have all of these." The Emperor's tail lashed in anger. "So we have grown complacent. We have spent millennia beating primitives and forgot what real warfare looks like." Thexler, who had survived the battle, stepped forward. "There is something else, Emperor. The way they fought. There was no passion, no rage, no honor. They simply killed us with perfect efficiency. It was like fighting machines, not living beings." Another council member pulled up additional footage. "We have been monitoring human communications. Their military coordination is extraordinary. Every ship acts as part of a single organism. Their tactical doctrine is based on something they call the Proxima Wars." "What are these Proxima Wars?" the Emperor asked. Kesseran brought up translated human historical records. 200 years ago, humanity nearly destroyed itself. Multiple factions fought with nuclear weapons, biological weapons, and AI-controlled combat systems. Entire colonies were wiped out. Their homeworld came close to being uninhabitable. The weapons they used on us, they originally designed to kill each other. The chamber fell silent. The implications were staggering. Humanity had fought itself with weapons designed to kill beings just as intelligent and resourceful as themselves. Every tactic, every strategy, every weapon system had been refined through wars against opponents who could think and adapt. The Valdrath, by contrast, had spent millennia conquering species that could barely fight back. "We need a new strategy," the Emperor said finally. "Clearly our traditional approach will not work. What are our options?" The military council began discussing possibilities. Develop new shields that could stop kinetic weapons. Design ships specifically to counter human tactics. Perhaps attempt boarding actions, where Valdrath warriors might have an advantage in close combat. Then a junior intelligence officer, barely old enough to have scales, raised his hand. "Your Majesty, there is another problem. The subject species are watching. The Emperor turned his golden eyes on the young officer. Explain. The officer activated a new display showing communication intercepts from across the Empire. The battle footage has spread throughout our territory. The subject species have seen the Valdrath defeated. There are already reports of unrest, small acts of rebellion, refusals to pay tribute. The humans have shown everyone that the Imperium can be beaten. This was the real danger. The Valdrath controlled their empire through fear and the perception of invincibility. If that perception shattered, 800 star systems might rise in rebellion. The Empire could collapse from within. Then we have no choice, the Emperor said. We must commit everything. Assemble the Grand Armada, 300,000 ships. We will drown the humans in numbers. Even their superior weapons cannot stand against that. The Council erupted in discussion. 300,000 ships was 1/3 of the entire Valdrath military. It would leave other regions vulnerable. It would take months to assemble. But what other option was there? It will be done, Krelnath said, though his voice lacked confidence. Meanwhile, on Luna, the capital of the Terran Federation, a very different discussion was taking place. The Federation Council chamber was modest compared to the Valdrath throne room. Simple chairs arranged in a circle, holographic displays showing data rather than symbols of power. The people here wore business attire, not ceremonial armor. Secretary General Okafor stood at the center reviewing the latest intelligence reports. The Valdrath are assembling a massive fleet. Our estimates suggest 300,000 vessels. They are pulling ships from across their entire empire. Admiral Zhao attended via holographic projection from the Indomitable. 300,000. That is a significant force. Can we stop them? One council member asked. Zhao considered the question carefully. In a direct battle? Possibly. Our weapons are superior, but at some point numbers matter. We would take casualties. Significant casualties, so we negotiate? Another council member suggested. We have proven we can defend ourselves. Perhaps now they will be willing to discuss terms? No. Everyone turned to look at Okafor. The Secretary General had been quiet during most of the meeting, but now he spoke with authority. If we negotiate now, after their first defeat, we look weak. Every species in the galaxy will see that the Valdrath can force us to the negotiating table through sheer numbers. We will face challenges from everyone, constantly testing to see if we will back down. Admiral Zhao nodded slowly. The Secretary General is correct. We need to establish that humanity is not to be challenged, ever, under any circumstances. What do you propose? Okafor asked. Zhao smiled, though there was no warmth in it. We introduce them to Terran strategic doctrine. Phase 2 operations. We do not fight their fleet. We dismantle their empire. She pulled up a tactical map of Valdrath space. They are pulling ships from across their territory to assemble this Grand Armada. That means their infrastructure is vulnerable. Shipyards, supply depots, communication relays, fuel stations, all defended by minimal forces. You want to attack their infrastructure? A council member said. While they are gathering to attack us? Exactly. We use small strike groups, fast ships with cloaking capability. They hit targets, destroy critical infrastructure, and disappear before reinforcements arrive. We do not try to hold territory. We just break things. Another council member was frowning. That seems ruthless. It is ruthless, Zhao agreed. It is also effective. The Valdrath expect us to defend our territory and fight their fleet. We will not give them that battle. Instead, we will show them that declaring war on humanity means watching your empire burn. The council debated for hours. Some argued for a more diplomatic approach. Others worried about the moral implications of targeting infrastructure. But in the end, the vote was nearly unanimous. Humanity had not wanted this war. But if the Valdrath insisted on fighting, they would learn exactly how humans fought. Okafor sent the final message to Admiral Zhao. You have authorization for Phase 2 operations. Show them what it means to challenge Earth. Zhao saluted through the hologram. Yes, sir. It is time we taught the galaxy a lesson. We do not fight for glory. We do not fight for honor. We fight to win. As the council meeting ended, Okafor stood alone in the chamber looking at the map of Valdrath space. 300,000 ships were gathering to invade human territory. They would never get the chance. The Grand Armada arrived in human space 3 months after the first battle, and found nothing. High Strategos Krelnath stood on the bridge of a new flagship, the Unbreakable Will, and stared at empty space. 300,000 ships had jumped into the system, where human colonies had been reported. But the colonies were abandoned. The defensive stations were gone. The human fleet had vanished. "Search the entire system," Krelnath ordered. They must be hiding somewhere. But the search revealed nothing. No hidden bases, no cloaked ships, just empty planets and silent space stations. Then the reports started coming in. "Strategos, we are receiving a distress call from the Kolvar shipyards. They report human ships attacking. The yards are on fire." Krelnath pulled up the location. Kolvar was 400 light-years behind the Grand Armada, deep in Valdrath territory. "How many human ships?" The report says,
12 vessels, sir. 12?
Krelnath could not believe it. "Send a response fleet immediately." But by the time Valdrath ships arrived at Kolvar, the human strike group was gone. The shipyards, which had been building vessels for the Imperium for 2,000 years, were destroyed. Not damaged, not disabled. Completely destroyed. The facilities were twisted metal and cooling plasma. More reports flooded in over the following days. Supply Depot Delta 7 destroyed. Communication relay stations across 6 systems offline. Fuel refineries at Thexan Prime reduced to slag. Every attack followed the same pattern. A small group of human ships would appear, strike with devastating efficiency, and vanish before reinforcements could arrive. The Grand Armada sat in empty human space, unable to find an enemy to fight, while behind them the Valdrath Empire burned. "They are not fighting us," Thexuler said quietly. "They are dismantling our infrastructure." Krelnath slammed his fist against the command console. "Then we return." "We defend our territory." "And do what?" Thexuler asked. "Chase small groups of ships across hundreds of systems?" "They are hitting targets faster than we can respond. The moment we move to defend one location, they strike 3 others." It was a nightmare scenario. The Grand Armada was designed for massive fleet battles, for overwhelming force applied to a single location. But the humans were not giving them that battle. Instead, they were conducting surgical strikes against targets that could not defend themselves. Admiral Zhao watched the operation unfold from her new command center on the stealth carrier Phantom. The carrier itself was invisible to most sensors, a ship designed during the Proxima Wars when humanity had learned to fight wars where being seen meant being dead. Around her, displays showed the status of 30 different strike groups operating across Valdrath space. Each group consisted of 10 to 15 ships, all equipped with the latest stealth technology and powered by the most advanced reactors humanity could build. Strike Group 7. Report successful destruction of shipyard. Facilities at Morath, her tactical officer reported. 0 casualties. Strike Group 12 is moving on the fuel depot at Xerxes Prime. Estimated time to target 6 hours. Zhao marked the targets on her tactical map. Red dots spread across Valdrath territory like an infection. Every red dot was a critical piece of infrastructure that the Imperium needed to maintain its empire. And humanity was destroying them one by one. "What is the status of the Grand Armada?" she asked. "Still holding position in the Kepler system. They seem paralyzed. Our intelligence suggests they are receiving dozens of distress calls and cannot decide which to respond to." Zhao allowed herself a small smile. This was classic strategic warfare. You did not fight the enemy's strength. You avoided the Grand Armada entirely and attacked everything that supported it. Supply chains, communication networks, industrial capacity, the things that a massive fleet needed to function. The Valdrath had spent 10,000 years conquering species that could not strike back effectively. They had never faced an opponent that could attack deep in their territory, that could appear anywhere and vanish like ghosts. On Thesseron Prime, the Emperor called another emergency council session. But this time the mood was not angry. It was desperate. "We have lost 47 shipyards," the industrial minister reported. "Fuel production is down 60%. Our communication network is in shambles. Systems are losing contact with the capital daily." "And the subject species?" the Emperor asked, though he already knew the answer. The intelligence officer looked grim. "Open rebellion in 32 systems. The Korath have declared independence. The Vexal have seized control of their sector. Without our ships to enforce order, we are losing control." Kesaran, the science advisor, brought up projections. "At the current rate of infrastructure loss, we will be unable to maintain the Grand Armada in the field for more than 3 months. After that, ships will begin running out of fuel and ammunition. They will be forced to return to bases that may no longer exist. The Emperor stood from his throne and walked to the massive windows overlooking the capital city. For 10,000 years, Valdrath had ruled this empire. They had brought order to chaos. They had built something that was supposed to last forever, and humanity was taking it apart in months. "What are our casualties?" he asked quietly. "Minimal, Emperor. The humans are not targeting civilian populations. They are only destroying military and industrial targets. But the economic damage is catastrophic." The Emperor understood. The humans were showing restraint. They could have attacked cities. They could have killed billions of Valdrath civilians. But they chose not to. This was a deliberate message. We can destroy everything you have built, but we are not monsters. It made the defeat even more bitter. Then came the incident that ended the war. The stealth frigate Shadow of Terra, one of humanity's most advanced ships, penetrated the Thessaron system defenses. It was a vessel designed for exactly this kind of mission, equipped with technology that made it almost invisible, and piloted by some of the best officers in the Terran fleet. Commander Lisa Park sat in the captain's chair, watching the approach to Thessaron Prime. "Target lock confirmed. Kinetic impactor ready. Range to target?" she asked. 200,000 kilometers. "We are within the minimum defense perimeter, but their sensors have not detected us." Park took a breath. This was the mission. This was the message that needed to be sent. "Fire!" The kinetic impactor launched from the Shadow of Terra's main railgun. It was a simple weapon, a 10-ton tungsten rod accelerated to a significant fraction of light speed. But when it struck, it would hit with the force of a dinosaur-killing asteroid. The target was not Thessaron Prime itself. It was the Emperor's Palace moon, a small satellite that orbited the capital world and served as a symbol of Valdrath power. The impactor struck the moon, dead center. The energy released was beyond imagination. The entire moon cracked, massive fissures spreading across its surface. Pieces of the satellite began to break away, spinning off into space. The destruction was visible from the surface of Thessaron Prime, a sight that billions of Valdrath witnessed. Commander Park opened a communication channel, broadcasting on all Valdrath frequencies. "This is the Terran fleet. We could have hit your throne world. This is mercy. End this war." The Shadow of Terra vanished into stealth mode and was gone before the Valdrath could even begin to respond. Emperor Thracical watched his palace moon die from the windows of his throne room. Pieces of the shattered satellite glowed as they burned through the atmosphere of Thessaron Prime. His advisors stood silent behind him. "They were inside our defenses," he said quietly. "They could have struck anything. The capital. This palace. They chose not to." "It is a message, Emperor," Thexular said. "They are showing us that nowhere is safe, that they can reach anything they wish to reach. But they are also showing restraint." The Emperor turned from the window. For the first time in his long life, he looked old, tired. "Prepare a delegation. We will sue for peace." The treaty was signed aboard the Indomitable 6 weeks later. The Valdrath Empire ceded all disputed systems. They recognized Terran sovereignty. They agreed to mutual non-aggression and opened diplomatic relations. In exchange, humanity would cease its campaign of infrastructure destruction and provide limited assistance in helping the Valdrath repair their economy. High Strategos, Krelnath stood across from Admiral Zhao as the treaty was finalized. His scales were dull, his posture defeated, but he had to know. "How?" he asked. "How did a species so young become so lethal?" Zhao looked at him with something that might have been pity. "We spent 200 years fighting ourselves. The Proxima Wars nearly destroyed us. We used nuclear weapons, bioweapons, AI-controlled kill swarms. We fought with everything we had because we were fighting other humans. Beings just as intelligent as us, just as resourceful. Every weapon we have, every tactic we use was designed to kill opponents who could think and adapt and learn." She paused, letting that sink in. "You spent 10,000 years conquering primitives, species that could barely reach their own moons. You never faced a real challenge. You never had to innovate. You never had to learn what real warfare looks like." Krelnath was silent for a long moment. "Then you never stood a chance. That is what you are saying. From the moment you issued that ultimatum, this outcome was inevitable. You just did not know it yet. Thank you for watching and comment for next part.